Well, today marks 20 days since the presidential election. After 2 weeks of voter fraud claims from the Trump campaign, there are some Republicans now joining calls for the president to concede the race. Meanwhile, Joe Biden announced his first cabinet picks. He'll do that tomorrow as his team continues to push the General Services Administration to formally recognize his victory. Let's talk more politics now with former State Senate President Mike Haridopolos joining us to talk more. Mike, good morning. Good to see you today.
Good morning, Ryan. How are you today?
Doing good. It was a good weekend. So the election controversy continues. What is the Trump campaign's next move? They kind of had a little division, yet they move forward with some cases in a number of states, really focusing on those signatures in a lot of cases.
Exactly. We're at the point now where, with all of the hubbubs for the last almost 3 weeks now since the election, the polling is coming out. It's been very interesting. The Rasmussen poll, which is the most accurate poll during the election cycle, is saying that almost half of the American public think there was some type of shenanigans going on during the election. Now, the Trump campaign has run into a couple problems, most recently in Pennsylvania, as you mentioned, where the court is saying, look, the election's over, you need to move on. What the president is saying, the person or the judge who made this decision is an Obama appointee. Let's send it to the Supreme Court and get a more accurate answer. So they're just kind of tussle back and forth. My recommendation, as you and I talked about last week, is this. If I'm Joe Biden, I want to have a full, let's just say, autopsy of this election and prove that President Trump is wrong, because so many people are questioning, especially the late night numbers that came in states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Why not have a full autopsy so when he takes office in January, which is he's preparing to do right now, he has the legitimacy he wants, so he doesn't have this cloudy nature which happened back like in 2000.
Yeah, and projected President-elect Joe Biden now moving forward with his cabinet appointments. Anything surprising by that, and who do you think he'll see him appoint in the coming days?
Well, as you know, he's already picked, at least the news reports came out, by a new Secretary of State, a longtime confidant of his, a longtime person who shares his political philosophy, let alone foreign policy. You've also seen a selection for the National Security Advisor coming out, the United Nations. So it seems like he's picking his foreign policy team first. As we already know, he's having the phone calls that are necessary with other foreign leaders around the world, trying to reestablish some of those relationships that might have been fractured during the Trump years. But the good news report, of course, is the fact that Saudi Arabia and Israel are actually talking right now, trying to normalize those relations. And so it seems to me like despite some of the politics here, the Biden administration, which looks likely, is starting to line up. Of course, Trump is going to continue to fight in the courts, believing that if the, quote, accurate votes are counted, he could win some of those disputed states.
Mike, let's finish with this. I felt Democrats had to be careful with the Supreme Court nomination because the election was coming up. Maybe Republicans in the same boat here with the Senate race coming up in Georgia. Is that a factor? And now we've got one of the candidates talking about a COVID positive test.
Oh, it's a wild time in Georgia. Senator Loeffler, who was appointed by the governor, Governor Kemp, has come down with COVID. She is a person who's been in the Senate for approximately a year. At this point, Republicans are leading in the polls, whatever that means, by a very thin margin. But again, the complications coming up with COVID, where a candidate is off the campaign trail. How will that impact the race? In general, I think this is a national race. I think at this point, the Republicans have to be fair because Georgia's are usually a Republican state. But that's going to literally decide who's going to win the United States Senate and probably decide what direction the country goes, because a Republican Senate and a president who's a Democrat means stalemate. A Democrat sweep means very different America in a couple months.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it. There's a reason the market celebrated after Election Day, because that was not the case. We'll see what happens January 5th. Mike, great insight. We'll talk to you at 8:30.
Thank you, Ryan.